everyone. I'm Jessica James and welcome back to the Millcreek Government Channel. You are going to love today's program because we have joining us Norma Carey from the Erie County Sheriff's Department SCUBA Division. Thank you so much for being here today, Norma. I am so excited to have you and share your SCUBA knowledge with our viewers today.
Hi, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Well, first and foremost, what is the mission of this particular division of the Sheriff's Department, and when did the SCUBA team originate?
Well, our mission is to provide search and rescue services to all of Erie County in the event of any water-related accident or emergency. So we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to provide search and rescue in the water if it's needed. We also do a lot of work with local police agencies when they need services as far as looking for evidence or stolen property that's been discarded in the water. Actually, the team was formed back in 1967. At the time, there was no water rescue units anywhere in the area. And there was a missing child in western Pennsylvania, and in the area where this child was missing, there was a couple of ponds. So the sheriff at the time contacted our local dive club and asked the recreational divers, hey, would you guys mind lending a hand and helping out and checking out the pond? And so they said, sure, we'd be glad to help. And so they did. They searched the pond, and as a result of that whole incident, it was determined, you know, we really need this kind of service in the county, and so the SCUBA team was formed.
Right, so it started as an accident, but it was really a necessity that we needed all along.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just had another show on and we were talking about shipwrecks, so, you know, this has been something our community has needed for a very long time. And you mentioned, that's the other question I had for you, was you're not just doing Lake Erie, do you do ponds as well?
We do any waterways in Erie County is what our jurisdiction is as the Sheriff's Department. So we do any of the inland lakes, the creeks, the ponds, in addition to Lake Erie itself.
Sure, okay. And what does SCUBA is an acronym, so can you tell us what SCUBA stands for?
Sure, SCUBA stands for Self-Contained Underwater Breathing Apparatus.
That's a mouthful, but it's very self-explanatory. You've brought all of your equipment here with you today, and like you said, this is just this organization and this department of the Sheriff's Office is just really needed. From the bio you gave me before the show, I understand that you have quite the knowledge of diving, and you've been a certified diver for 35 years. You've been on the Sheriff's SCUBA team for 33 years, and then a NAUI dive instructor for 21 years.
Yes,
so
you tell it's my passion. It's my passion, yeah.
I can tell. So you probably do professionally as well as recreationally.
Right,
but
absolutely.
This is not your full-time job. You're actually a volunteer for the organization?
Right, yes. I actually work at Erie Insurance. That's my full-time job. And then, you know, diving with the SCUBA team, you know, is a service I provide. And then I teach diving through J&S Dive Shop, do a lot of classes in the evening, belong to the local dive club for recreation. So, yeah, do a lot of diving.
Can you tell me, why did you want to join the Sheriff's SCUBA team? I mean, it sounds like you got certified and you jumped in right away to helping with them. What made you want to do that?
I did get in pretty quick. Well, as soon as I got certified, I joined a local dive club because that's kind of what you do if you want to dive. You need to, you know, meet people who dive. So I joined a local dive club, and most of the members of the Erie Skin Divers Club were also members of the Sheriff's Department SCUBA team. And so you would go to meetings and you would hear them talking about the calls they'd been on and the different community service projects that they were involved in. And I said, wow, I really want to get into that. That was something that really sounded like it would be something that I could do to provide service. So
it sounds very rewarding.
It is. It absolutely is.
And how many people are on the SCUBA team right now? I mean, I'm sure it maybe was smaller at first and it's grown.
Actually, we have about 20 active members in the club right now. So all of the members are volunteers. So, you know, there's no compensation for any of the services we provide. It's all volunteers. So the number kind of grows. You know, people get, just like the volunteer fire departments, right? People get involved, and then family kind of gets in the way sometimes, and you have to kind of let go of things. But we average between 20 to 25 members.
Okay, and scuba diving is certainly not for the faint of heart. I know that you have to have a certain type of personality to go as far as you do beneath the water, but also certain certifications. Could you touch on maybe what personality type you have to have and what you had to do to become certified?
Well, as far as the scuba team, I would say, a personality would be dedication, because we're on call 24/7. We're available day and night, regardless of the weather, if it's blizzarding or storming, whatever. So you have to be dedicated. Sometimes it's a tough job, when you have a drowning and there's family members around. And, it can be both emotionally draining and physically draining. So you really have to have dedication. And as far as the scuba team too, I think being a team player is important too. I guess that's why they call it scuba team, right?
Right.
But you can't go out and be rogue. You have to follow the procedures and take direction. And there's a man in charge, and you have to kind of follow that protocol. So
Right.
those kinds of things all come into play.
And and you mentioned being a team player and you can't go rogue. I would like to let our audience know that I am also certified, and we brought our certification cards with us here to show you. But I always think of scuba diving as very serene, but it's also sometimes a really wild feeling when you're that far under the water.
Absolutely.
You can't get freaked out and jump to the surface. So you have to have a very calm personality too.
Calm, absolutely calm, and I think being safety conscious too, because there's so many safe diving rules, I like to say, for diving. And to be safe, it's there is some risk to the sport, obviously, but if you follow the rules and the training that you learned in your basic class, it can be a safe sport. But you're right, you calm, never panicking, always keeping your head about you, very important.
Right, right. And tell me, I'm sure, or maybe it hasn't changed, but when you first got certified to now, because you're still a dive instructor yourself, what would someone have to go through to become certified?
To become certified in a basic certification, it's typically an 8-week course if you meet one night a week. There's theory sessions that you go through. You have to learn about the physiology, what diving does to your body, because pressure affects your body as you're diving. The air that you're breathing, can have impacts to your body, so you have to learn about those things. So there's a lot of theory that people don't understand. I think when they come and take a scuba course, they think it's going to be all fun and games, but there's really a lot of theory that you have to go through. And then there's pool work. It's best to always get acclimated and comfortable in a pool before you would go out and venture in open water. So, you typically have a couple hours of theory, a couple hours of pool each night in that 8-week session, and then you go out and do open water training. And for a NAUI certification, you're required to have 5 open water dives with your instructor. And you kind of rehash all of the skills that you did in the pool, but now you're doing it in a whole different environment, probably with a wetsuit on that maybe you didn't wear in the pool. So it's a whole new experience, but it certainly adds to your comfort level.
Right, and I think those open water dives are so crucial. I mean, first of all, they're mandatory, but they're so crucial because I remember doing my pool dives. The water is calm and still, and all the conditions are controlled. When I did my second open water dive, the current was very strong, and I had to kind of hold on to, the floor. I was in the ocean, but I had to hold on to the ocean floor to stay in place, because we would have kind of been drug along, had we not. So, and it is important, like you said, to always dive with a buddy, never dive alone. And then, were there any extra certifications you had to go through to become a part of the sheriff's scuba team, above and beyond the NAUI certification? Right.
So to become an actual member of the scuba team, you obviously have to be basic certified, but you are required to have advanced certification. We highly encourage and recommend also rescue diver as well as ice diving.
Okay.
So those are the certifications, but probably even the bigger part above the certifications is the experience level. divers are required to have a minimum of 75 log dives.
Wow.
So, and you know yourself as a diver, 75 log dives for an active diver would probably take a good year to a year and a half.
75 dives, that is a lot.
It's a lot. So, you know, and in that year and a half, you're going to dive in a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different conditions, you know, under the ice, night, during the day, limited visibility, maybe in the current.
Right.
So by the time you have that experience, you're pretty much going to be available to dive in any of the scenarios that we typically get called out on as a member of the scuba team.
And sometimes it's murky water. I remember a time where I dove and I couldn't see 3 feet in front of my face, and I was with a group, and we actually had to hold on to ropes so we wouldn't lose each other. Have you guys had to do that too?
Absolutely. And 3 feet is sometimes a good day when you're looking and doing search and rescue work. I mean, sometimes you can't see your hand in front of your face, and it's all by feel. You know, you're just feeling around on the bottom for that gun or whatever it is you might be looking for.
Sure, sure. So that kind of leads me into the next thing. What types of calls do you get called out on?
Well, again, any type of water-related accident or emergency. So it could be a drowning, it could be a boating accident, it could be, like I said, a missing person. There's bodies of water that need to be checked. But we do a lot of work for the various police agencies locally, and as well as the state police, looking for crime, you know, criminal things that have been tossed in the water, evidence. We've looked for, you know, many guns over the years and recovered those types of things. Stolen safes we've recovered, rifles, I mean, stolen vehicles, I mean, you name it, and, you know, we've been asked to look for it.
Sure, so tell me, what's the first step when you do find that missing item that you've been looking for? Do you flag somebody? How do you tell them, I've got it, and we need to go back up again?
Right, it depends exactly what we're looking for as to what the protocol would be once we found it. Of course, if it's evidence in a crime, we have to be very careful that we don't disturb it. You know, if we have the ability, they might want us to take a picture of it before we move it, or handle it as little as possible so that we don't remove any evidence that might be on that. But you know, sometimes it's a matter of bringing it up as soon as possible too, you know, so again, it depends on what it is we're looking for.
Sure, so you guys are, I mean, dealing with evidence, you're probably wearing, you know, certain gloves, and, you know, we talked about this a little bit before the show, but Lake Erie is cold. When you dive in Lake Erie, what is the temperature?
Right now it's about 42 degrees, and even in the summer, you know, if the surface temperature in the lake gets up to 72 or 74, we have a very sharp thermocline in our lake.
Yes.
So when you get down about 50 feet, the water can drop as much as 10 to 20, you know, degrees. So it's cold in the summer, even here in the lake.
Yeah, and I think when people are just, you know, playing and splashing around in the lake, I think you can even feel it. You know, if you're just skin diving and you go down 10 feet, I think you can feel that thermocline drop too. I've felt it before. So from there, what does your team structure look like? I mean, do you have your entire scuba team go out on a call, or only half of you go, or whoever can respond?
Right, so the structure kind of start at the beginning. Sheriff Loomis kind of supervises our team. Sam Leo is the captain of our team. He's been captain for well over 30 years, does a great job, and I'm currently co-captain. And then we have the 20 team members. Now, all the members of the team are commissioned special deputies. So when you actually apply to the team, once you have all your requirements, you put in an application, they do a background check, and then if you pass that, then you become a special deputy with the Sheriff's Department.
Wow.
And then depending on the call, we do have first responders in our team, and we all carry pagers. So if I got a call right now, my pager would go off, and with my equipment in my car, I'm expected to respond from wherever I am. So
you have your equipment on you all the time, and you would need to leave our interview right now and go.
Well, I wouldn't do that to you. But we have enough first responders that I could be a little late.
Okay.
But you know, most of us, you know, like I've made arrangements and work's been great. You know, if I have to leave
That's
work,
what I wanted to know,
you know, they understand, and you know, write letters to people's employers, and they're all very gracious and understand the service we provide is an important one. So you know, they allow folks to leave work, and some even get paid if they have to leave. You know, so that's great.
You guys are providing a wonderful service to the community. How many calls do you think you have to go out on in a year?
And that's a tough question. I think that's the toughest one you had in your list here, and that's because it varies so much. I'll say when I first got on the team in the early 80s, it seemed like we would get called 2 and 3 times a month, and that's a lot. But then over the years, the last several years, it seems like our waterways have gotten so much safer. I think people are just being more safety conscious, they take more precautions. So fortunately, we don't have the accidents that we used to. And I'll be honest, the majority of our calls now are calls from the police agencies asking for our help with evidence searches.
Sure, sure. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, it's nice to know that people are taking their time out on the water responsibly, and they're taking the, the proper safety measures. That's got to make you feel good,
It does, and I think there's a lot of organizations that promote that, and as a result, I think it has become so much safer.
Sure, and we have some awesome props here with us on the table. First of all, and we can show this a little bit, we'll hold up both of our, you've got your instructor card. Now there are 2 different SCUBA certifications that you can get. I am actually PADI certified and you're NAUI certified.
That's right.
And they're both well respected and acknowledged, but we just wanted to show our 2 cards here. And let's go through some of the other equipment we have on the table. You've got your fins and your mask, and I also see the snorkeling tube. And people don't realize you actually have to wear that while you're scuba diving. And go ahead and tell why that is.
For basic certifications, you are required to have a snorkel. A lot of divers, once they gain experience, say, I don't need this anymore, and they take it off. But I always, even after 30 years, I still dive with a snorkel. And the reason we do, it's a lot easier swimming with a snorkel if you had a long distance to swim. Right. And plus, if it's rough, you don't have to try to hold your head above the water. Your snorkel's always going to be above the waves.
Right.
So, it's in my opinion, it's a piece of safety equipment, and I always dive with a snorkel.
I agree. I like it too. And like you said, in the rough waters, it is easier to just have that on than, trying to breathe, and you're getting lapped up with water, or, trying to use your the rest of your apparatus to breathe.
Right.
So what do you have to the left of you here?
So here I have a buoyancy compensator. Divers consider it a BC or a BCD. So we use this to control our buoyancy while we're diving, and also I kind of like to think of it as a PFD, a personal flotation device. So if I'm on the surface and I may be sick or not feeling well, or I just want to float and I don't want to have to tread water, I can just inflate this, and it has enough buoyancy to keep me and my equipment with my head above the water. So again, it's a nice piece of safety equipment.
Sure, and you did mention something that I want our viewers to know. I don't think I ever realized this until I started diving. Tell us what you have to put in those zippers on the side pockets, or you might have one that actually clips in.
Weights, yes. So we also have to wear weights. You're naturally buoyant, but especially around here, we have to wear some kind of an exposure suit, whether it's a wetsuit or a dry suit. And you're like a cork when you have that suit on. So you need to add weight to compensate for all the buoyancy you've just added with that wetsuit.
Right.
So we have lead weights that we put in our BC. Some divers wear it on a belt around their waist, but a weighting system is an important piece of equipment too.
Sure, that lets you sink down to the bottom.
Right.
Yep. And I know from personal experience, I have not dove in Lake Erie yet, but you would need more weights if you're in salt water versus if you're in lake water, because the salt makes you more buoyant. And I have to tell you, just from my own experience, diving in salt water and not having the proper weight, you cannot get down to the bottom.
You're right. It's miserable.
It is. You just keep, you keep
fight.
trying and trying, and it's just not working. So you just need to keep adding more weight.
You're right. Yes.
Okay, and then you've got a computer system that will tell you when you're getting close to out of air. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Right. So this is my regulator system. This is my primary air source here. This is what I would breathe off of. This is what we call an octopus. So this is a spare. So if you and I were diving together and you ran out of air, I would have a backup so that I could share that with you.
And that's the yellow one. So it's brightly colored. Do you want to lift that up so our viewers can see it? And that's the yellow one. So that way, if there is an emergency, someone else can grab it off of you and use it as their rescue breather.
Right, yes. And then most divers will also dive with a console. Mine is actually a computer console, so it's not turned on because I don't have it hooked up to a tank right now. But if I did, it would show me the pressure in my tank right to the pound. It would say 3,126 pounds or whatever it was. So this allows me to keep close track of my air supply. You know, there's no reason for a diver to run out of air because this is always hanging right off your right off your left hand. So you always know how much air you have in the tank. And then the other things that the computer will show you is how deep you are, how long you've been there, how much longer you're allowed to stay at that depth. So it gives you the water temperature, the time of day. So it's a computer in a computer. So it gives you everything you need to, and it adds to your safety as well when you're diving.
Sure. And then down in front, we don't have it up on the chair. It is very heavy. She has her air tank.
Right. I brought my 63 cubic foot tank. There's a lot of different sizes. That's one of my tanks. Most divers that dive actively may have an 80 cubic foot tank. It's going to give you a little more air and a little longer bottom time. So depending on the kind of diving that you're going to do will depend on what size tank you might want to use.
Sure. And has there ever been a time where you had to dive multiple dives in one day?
Recreationally, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Especially when I go to the Caribbean, I'll do 3 and 4 dives in a day.
You want to squeeze as many as you can.
Right, exactly. Around here, as far as the team goes, yes, we've been on calls that have been prolonged, you know, over days trying to find a drowning victim or something. So, you know, sometimes, you know, you'll make a dive, you'll take a break, someone else will take their turn, and then you'll go back in. So typically for search and rescue, we don't have to go in more than twice a day.
Okay.
Because it's tough, like I said, both emotionally and physically.
Right.
And plus the conditions are typically cold when we're doing these kinds of dives, so your body kind of has to, you have to give your body a rest.
A rest, yeah. And I know that, you know, there's only so many dives you can make in a day, and then, like you said, you have to give your body a rest. And when you're, you know, there's so many things you have to learn scientifically, like you said, that, you know, we're not supposed to be underwater, but we're defying the laws and doing it anyway. And, you know, the deeper you go down, the pressure on your body changes. So that changes, you know, the air bubbles that are in your body. So you also need to come up slowly. Is that right?
You're absolutely right. Yeah. To my earlier point, you know, there's a lot of training, a lot of, you know, physiology that you have to understand. And, you know, you're talking about things like the bends, which I'm sure everybody heard of. And, you know, it's probably one of the most complex things that can happen to a diver, but also one of the most serious too. So, you know, you have to understand what the pressure does to the air that you're breathing and why your body's going to absorb that nitrogen. And as a result of that, why I can only stay 20 minutes at 100 feet. You know, and then to your point, you have to come up 30 feet a minute or slower to allow your body to decompress as you're coming up. You might have to stop at 15 feet for a couple minutes to just off gas and breathe to get rid of some of the nitrogen you accumulated. So there's a lot to the sport that people don't realize until they start getting into it. And that's why you know, having a certification is mandatory. You have to understand that for your own safety and the safety of the divers around you.
Right. And so you can't just go out and rent this equipment and put it on and go in the lake. You do have to have a certification.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I wanted to touch on, the equipment is, I think, you're probably used to it, but I think the equipment is very, very heavy. When you get all of it on your body, and you know it gets lighter, I think, once you get in the water, because you know the buoyancy takes over. But to actually physically carry this around on land is very heavy.
You're right. The tanks weigh about 40 pounds, so they are difficult on land. But what I tell my students, don't be intimidated, because if I took that tank right now under the water, I could hold it up with one finger. That's how light it is.
Exactly.
So it's just a matter of getting used to it.
Sure, sure. And you've got a picture behind us. Can you tell us, this is the Search and Rescue SCUBA team van, and can you tell us what you guys keep in the van and then what's on top of the van?
Right, so this is actually in a parade. We do a lot of community service work, and we're in a parade here. So in the van, we have a lot of buoys, lines. We keep an underwater metal detector in there, underwater dive lights, and then we have a couple spare sets of scuba equipment in the back. It's mainly a staging area and a place for the divers to get warm, because like I said, often conditions are very adverse when we're doing a call. So we have a place for divers to go in, get changed, get warmed up. But we do have an inflatable inflatable boat on the roof as well, and we have a motor for that boat inside the van. In the event we have to get divers away from shore out to a scene.
Sure, and then when you are actually in the water, you've got something called a diver's down flag, which I think most people recognize. I've got one on the front bumper of my car. I'm so proud when I got certified. It's a little flag, and we will show a photo of it here, and tell people, what does that mean? When boats are out on the water and they see this diver's down flag, what does that mean?
Diver's down flag is exactly that. Means there's a diver below that flag, and boats are required to stay 100 feet from that flag. Unfortunately, not everyone reads the boater safety manual. They sometimes think it's a slalom marker for their skier behind their boat, you know. So, but you know, it's for the diver's safety, because a boat can be a dangerous thing to a diver on the surface.
Oh, sure. And so I definitely want to show that picture and you know, let people know they really should stay away from the diver's down flag if they see it. So we're going to educate them on what that looks like. And from my own experience, diving equipment is actually pretty expensive. How are you guys funded? Do you pay for your own equipment?
Yeah, all the divers are required to have their own equipment when they join the team. We don't have the funding to provide everybody with a full set of scuba gear, because again, you're talking between, you know, $1,500 to $2,000 for a full set of gear. But because we're all recreational divers to start with, you kind of buy it a piece at a time. So by the time you have the experience to get on the team, you have all your equipment. So we really don't have funding. We've got some grants over the years that have allowed us to get the rescue vehicle, the boat and such. We have some fundraisers throughout the years, you know, to help with things like the underwater metal detector and those sorts of things.
Sure. Can you tell me, and maybe if you don't have any fundraisers coming up, but what have been some fundraisers in the past?
Oh, we sell raffle tickets to, you know, baskets of cheer at local social clubs, that kind of things. You know, we had some big barbecue set and that kind of thing. So those are the kind of, we usually do raffle sets, you know, raffle drawings.
That's wonderful. I'm going to have to come to them. I am definitely into my scuba diving and all water related sports. So please, if our viewers have any questions, how can they get a hold of the scuba team?
Probably the easiest thing to do would be to email me directly, and the email would be ECSD, that's for Erie County Sheriff's Department, and then the word scuba team at hotmail.com. So ECSD at scubateam@hotmail.com, and I'll be glad to answer any inquiries that they might have.
That's wonderful. Norma, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
I am so excited that I was able to highlight some of the things you guys do. You do such good, wonderful work for the community, and it's a necessity we have this search and rescue team. So viewers, if you have your scuba certification, I would recommend you get in those 75 dives that they require. And make sure to contact Norma if you're interested in participating with the dive team. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Millcreek Government Channel. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.